Welcome to the first of many Bible studies. Today we're going to be looking at 1 John 1, the first verse only. So we're going to break down what this particularly means segment by segment. But before we do that, the intro for this video, I want to explain a concept which many of you probably already know, but for the most part, it's not well known in the Christian community that the Bible is what you would call a hyperlink text. So what that means is that every word and every verse is linked to another word or another verse. So every single book, as well as chapter, as well as verse, is related to another. So there's actually been a couple different studies on this hyperlink text concept. And there's actually an image out there, which you can see on the screen here, which shows you all of the different verses, which are on the bottom here in the entire Bible, obviously condensed. And there's a group of people that actually went out to um, try to figure out the linkage of everything and how things link. So obviously, at the beginning, you can see Genesis, how it relates to Revelation. You can follow the lines, and there's a few really great tools out there that help you understand, on Bible Hub, as well as Bible Gateway, that show you the linkage between the two. Um, you know, well, they show you the linkage between all the different verses. So very important. This concept, I'll probably visit it again shortly in another video. But the concept here is that the Bible is a hyperlinked text. Everything is interrelated, and that's what helps bridge the gap of time, right? So in the Old Testament, when that was finished, there was a 400 gap, which is the white page between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Um, so there's a 400-year gap between the Old and New Testament, right? The white page. It's also referred to in the Christian community. What's really important to understand is that everything is related, and this is God working among men effectively, who are the writers of the Old as well as the New Testament. So just keep that in mind, that as we go forward with doing this, that these are all of this scripture is interlinked. So to begin, back to 1 John 1, the full verse, I'll read that shortly here. It is, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So we're going to break this down a little bit, what this means. So in the first section here, what's highlighted in red, it's in the beginning was the Word. So what does that mean? So that means at the beginning of creation, the Word already existed. So before any matter, any human beings, if you look at the creation story, before anything was created, God existed at the beginning. So it's really important because what you'll read throughout the scripture is God's considered everlasting to everlasting, which means he's always existed and always will exist, and he'll never change. And there's other verses on that, and I won't get into all of that in this video. What's important about this first verse here is it's linked to the other two. So I'll kind of explain what that means. Um, the One of the other things that you'll notice, and particularly in the book of Revelation here, you'll see, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, saith the Lord, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. So the Alpha and the Omega, obviously that's Greek letters, so that's kind of like saying, I am the A to the Z. So it's God is all truth in this universe. And if you look at Jesus Christ particularly, it's all the truth in this universe in the body of a man, effectively. That's really something. And there's more to it than that, of course. He's all the life in this universe and other things. But he just think of it this way: he's all the truth in this universe. Everything true that could ever be said or done is within him. So that's very important to understand. Um, Also, I want to show you John chapter 1, verse 14, which is also related to John 1, verse 1. It says, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So again, as you see, how the linkage is between the different verses. This is just a very simple example, but the Word is made flesh, which is Jesus Christ. He dwelt among us, right? He's full of grace and truth. So what you'll see in hyperlink text is that there's a linkage, being the word was made flesh, and then it also expands upon it. So this is really an important concept with hyperlink text, is it's expanding upon the hyperlink, right, between the relationships of the verses. So very important to understand, because full of grace is actually something that's new as of this verse, and it's not in First John 1. Nonetheless, back to the original text here. Um, we look at the second part, which is, and the Word was with God. Now, this is, I think, very overlooked, and I want to try to uncover this a little bit for you. What this really means here is that when you look at the word with, and you can look at it in the English or you can look at it with the Greek, either or, you come to the same conclusion, that the word specifically is called out to be Jesus Christ, God Himself. So what it means when the word was with God, that means that Jesus Christ was with the Father. And that's a really important thing, because a lot of Christians even think that Jesus Christ just showed up one day and He's new and He's not in the Old Testament. And I'm going to show you in just a moment, just as one example, that He is in the Old Testament. But it's very important that you understand that concept, that Jesus Christ has always existed. God is everlasting to everlasting. His plan of salvation was planned, before the earth was ever created, before man was ever created, because He loves us and He is a God of love. And I won't get into the full dimensions of love in this video, but what's really important is Jesus Christ existed in the Old Testament. He existed before the world was ever made, because God never changes. So and I'm going to show you right now where Jesus Christ is in the Old Testament. So if we go to Daniel chapter 3, and we go to verse 25, let me just lay the groundwork here. Basically, what's happening is Daniel the prophet, as well as three other prophets of Yahweh, which is God's name in the Old Testament, um, which is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're thrown into the midst of a burning furnace. So what's really important here is that these men are thrown into the furnaces of Babylon, and basically what happens is they tell the king, we're not going to burn, we're not going to die. And what you'll see here in verse 25 is when they're in the fire, the midst of the furnace of Babylon, what you'll see here is, I'll read this for you here. Chapter 3, verse 25 says, He answered and said, Lo, I see four men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. So that's Jesus Christ in the Old Testament. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about that. They don't like to hear that, but that's the reality. And there's other places in the Bible where He does show up, and I'm not going to get into that in this video. I'll probably make that a different video. But what's really important here is God is everlasting to everlasting. He's always existed. He's always been the same, and He always will exist, and He always will be the same. And for something to be true, it has to be consistent, right? So think of it this way. Let's say you're born on, let's say you have let's say you were born on January 1st, 2000. Well, whether you know your birthday or not, what's true is true. So whether you have to go out and discover what your birthday was, or whether, even if someone lies about your birthday is still January 1st, 2000. So that just kind of gives you an understanding of, we might not fully understand God, but we have to go out and discover who He is and what He means to us and what He means in this fallen world. So very important. So God is in the Old Testament. And if I actually want to bring up one other point again, which is the hyperlink text, right? The prophets say that, when God, instead of flooding the world, when He comes back, the world's going to burn as the furnace. So this is actually a foreshadowing of the world burning as a furnace. And if you look at these prophets, they don't die because they trust in God. And if you read in the New Testament, all those who call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And that's from the fires that the world will burn with, in the Christian eschatology, or the study of last things, right before right as Jesus Christ is coming to the earth. So again, very, very important to understand the concept of a hyperlink text. So that's really the second part there, that identifies that Jesus Christ is with the Father, and that's really important. And they're both the same. So they're both true. They're both the same being, and that they always existed. And that's often, like I said, overlooked. So the third part, I think I covered this a little bit in the other ones, but it says, and the Word was God. So again, like I said a little bit ago, Jesus Christ is truth, and He is all of the truth in this universe as God. So, and obviously God has far more than that as truth, but like He has the capacity to manipulate physics, like we see in the book of Exodus with the waters parting, for example. So, very, very important to understand that. So, the conclusion here is that God the Father and Jesus Christ are the same, and they both always existed. God, also Jesus Christ, same being, is the truth and the source of it. And the last thing I'll mention is the truth itself became flesh, also known as Jesus Christ. So, really a beautiful verse. I think it's not really, I don't think it's really understood, hence why I made this video. And I hope that that this makes sense and that you follow along to other videos. Thank you.